Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page. Opponent preview, but not really. That's usually what we do on Thursdays, but Oklahoma's not playing this weekend. It is a Big 12 championship weekend. Oklahoma State and Texas down in Arlington, Georgia. And, OU didn't make it. I think the last time that we talked to you guys last week on Thursday, it was a situation that Oklahoma was going to need a lot of help. And for about 3.5 quarters in Stillwater, you thought you were going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were watching the game together. We thought that it might be headed that way, but that's something that obviously didn't work out in Oklahoma's favor, so they're sitting at home this week. You had the big news this week with the offensive coordinator stuff. We'll get into some of that, as well as some Big 12 awards that some Sooners took home.
No doubt about it. Just as a reminder for you folks out there watching here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page, a special offer for YouTube viewers, 2 months of SoonerScoop.com for $1. That is 2 months for $1. Promo code OU1. That is OU and the number 1 for 2 months of SoonerScoop.com, $1. Seems like a pretty good deal out there, and I know that
great deal.
Even though Oklahoma is, basically waiting to see where they're going to be in the bowl scenario, which we're going to talk to Andy Staples about that here shortly for the interview this week, joined by Andy Staples, On 3 national writer as well as national correspondent on YouTube. It seems like there's going to be a lot going on. The transfer portal is obviously busy. Jason Llewellyn enters the transfer portal in Oklahoma tight end today. And I think that there's just 2 names currently in there alongside of DJ Graham, who entered last week. But it's going to be interesting to kind of follow that here over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I expect more guys to go in. Who exactly, we don't know. I haven't heard any big names, but There's always maybe a couple surprises that go in the portal looking for somewhere else to play. I mean, maybe a Gavonte Barnes. It seems like they're, the running back room's going to get pretty tight.
We say that just because of the weirdness that was, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Gavonte Barnes decided to come back too. I know that he has a really good relationship with DeMarco Murray, so we'll see. We could see some surprise names in there, I'm sure. I know Dylan Gabriel's name has been floated out there. We get into that with Andy a little bit as well in terms of what the quarterback market is out there. But as of right now, there's only been 2 guys. And again, we'll see if more guys start to enter here. It officially opened December 4th
on Monday. Right.
So you could see kind of a host of guys maybe go in on that day.
No doubt about it. As we sit here on Thursday recording, it is official. Oklahoma has made Seth Latrell the offensive coordinator. They have promoted Joe John Finley to a co-offensive coordinator title, and it was something that we've been here. We did the instant reaction on Tuesday, or kind of the breaking news reaction on Tuesday with what was expected to be an announcement, and we got it on Wednesday, George. And now that it's officially official, I know that we've given kind of our thoughts on everything that went into the decision and the continuity and the process that Brent Venables went through. But any further comment, I guess, now that it's official?
Not really.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about it, but I think it was cool to see all the players kind of react to it on social media.
Sure.
A lot of guys retweeting it. I know Jackson Arnold put out a tweet. See Seth Latrell, Joe John Finley kind of put out their statements about how much this means to them, especially being guys that played for the University of Oklahoma. And then I think also Brent Venables' comments in the statements that he put out saying, hey, a lot of people are going to say this is a lazy hire, but it's not. This is something they felt really comfortable with. They did their due diligence in terms of external candidates and looking into them. But at the end of the day, I think the quote was, he just kept coming back to those 2 guys, and it made the most sense for them.
No doubt about it. And I think that it as we even talked our way through this, I think on Tuesday afternoon, working on the story that we put out Tuesday night, it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When you get down to it, it makes a lot of sense, and especially with the guys that they have coming back. And I know the continuity word has been used over and over and over again, but it just seems like there is a lot to play there. And it seems like when you have Jackson Arnold coming back and the guys that they have coming back at the skill position, it just makes a lot of sense.
And I think a big piece of this puzzle is the ability to keep DeMarco Murray, Bill Beatembo, Emmett Jones, 3 guys that were on board with this move. Whereas if you go out and you hire somebody from the outside, maybe you lose some of those guys. Maybe you lose all of them, and you're totally restarting. And all of a sudden, like you said, some of those guys that you mentioned, Jackson Arnold, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, Gavin Sawchuk, maybe all of a sudden they're looking to leave. This way, guys are behind it, players are behind it, the coaching staff is behind it. And again, you can continue doing what you're doing on offense and having some success. And, I think that the other part of this is Seth Latrell's a good play caller. Everywhere he's been, their offenses have been some of the best in the country. And so you just have to trust that he's going to do a good job of that. And I think he will. And it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of offense they run, because he's an air raid guy. He comes from the Mike Leach coaching tree. Obviously, Joe John Finley kind of comes from, the Bryles coaching tree in terms of what they're doing in the spread offense. What does that look like married together? And Andy Staples talks about it a little bit later too. But, what exactly does that look like? How much is it air raid? How much is it spread? Does it really matter as long as they're scoring points? No, but it's going to be fun to see and kind of hear how they're going to do that. And, the bowl game, when they get to the bowl game, it's going to probably be the first time we really see it. What does that look like? Because I would assume Seth Latrell will be calling plays whenever they play in whatever bowl game they're in.
Kind of crazy that if it was the Alamo Bowl, if you don't remember, that was an interim staff that coached the game. Kel Gundy called plays against Oregon in that, and Oklahoma could be headed back down to San Antonio without their offensive coordinator yet again, even though it's going to be the guy that's calling plays next year in Seth Latrell. It's just kind of, I guess, ironic how all that works out.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And again, I hope we get to hear from Seth and Joe John here in the next couple of weeks before the bowl game. I would assume we'll get to talk to him before the bowl game. Probably I would bet maybe next week. So it'll be interesting to hear from those guys, and I'm excited too to see what bowl game OU ends up in, even though it does feel like it's going to be the Alamo Bowl.
Most likely going to be the Alamo Bowl, and if that happens and we end up in San Antonio, it'll be interesting to do some shows from down there.
Got to do one at the Alamo.
Well, at the Alamo Bowl, which I've always thought is interesting, what you thought really happened there.
We'll keep that in storage until we get down there. Yeah.
Well, I will say,
save that
as somebody that has been down to the Alamo.
How about SeaWorld? You ever been to SeaWorld?
But I've been to both places. I've actually ate with Shamu at SeaWorld.
I love Shamu.
They're both overrated. Both overrated places.
We should go do don't they have roller coasters there? We should go do like a GoPro on the roller coaster there.
I don't do roller coasters.
I love a good roller coaster.
Interesting. Well, let us know when you want to be an adult. Oklahoma did have 6 players that were recognized by the conference on Wednesday. 4 first-team all Big 12 selections. Dylan Gabriel, unanimous at quarterback. Drake Stoops at wide receiver. You had Billy Bowman at safety, and then Danny Stutzman at linebacker, George. And let's just read through some of the stuff that Dylan Gabriel was able to do this year, because I think we do kind of lose sight of how good the man really was. He led the Big 12 in passing offense, passing efficiency, passing touchdowns with 30, passing yards with 3,660, ranked number 5 nationally, second in the Big 12 in completion percentage, as well as yards per attempt at 9.5. He ended up with 12 rushing touchdowns. That is the second most for quarterbacks nationally, and then ranking 7th all-time in passing yards at 14,865, as he calls it a career, or most likely at Oklahoma. We'll see. Not for Oklahoma, but elsewhere. And then 8th all-time in FBS and passing touchdowns. He ends up with 125 as we go into it. He is one of 10 finalists for the Manning Award. Baker Mayfield won it in 2017 and in 2018. Drake Stoops led the Big 12 in receptions with 78 and touchdown receptions with 10. Ends up 3rd in the Big 12 overall in receiving yards, 880, as well as receiving yards per game at 73.3. Ends up having 300-yard games in the last 4 regular season games for Oklahoma. And then Danny Stutzman led the team with 99 tackles, second in the Big 12 at 9 tackles per game. Kind of crazy that he ended up almost leading the Big 12 in tackles in back-to-back years after doing it in 2022.
And he missed some time.
And, had 2 less games than everybody else. Well, I guess
1.5.
7 less quarters than everybody else, if you will. And then Billy Bowman led the Big 12 in interceptions, had a nation-leading 3 pick sixes this year. I think the 6 interceptions overall was number 2 nationally.
Number 1 in the Big 12.
Number 1 in the Big 12. And then obviously had the 100-yard interception return, which tied a school record against BYU. One of 3 players to do that, the last being Julian Wilson, and second on the team in tackles with 61, 4 pass breakups, 3 tackles for loss. I think we've talked about it, George. Kind of sort of got screwed by the Jim Thorpe Award, which is just down the road, which is kind of interesting. Paycom. But overall, 4 first-team All-Big 12 guys. Your thoughts?
Very well deserving. I think all 4. If you would have asked me who would be the 4 to get on there, it would have been those 4.
Sure.
Going into this week, and especially Dylan Gabriel to be unanimous. We talked about it. I think he finished second in the voting for Offensive Player of the Year,
behind
Ollie Gordon. And Ollie Gordon's very deserving, and especially what he means to that Oklahoma State team. But I think you could have made a case for Dylan Gabriel. The way that he's played this season. Again, you take away one of those 2 losses, there's a good chance Dylan Gabriel's sitting in New York next weekend for the Heisman Trophy. So he was spectacular. Drake Stoops, what he's meant to this program is obviously a lot. But you look at his stats on the field, he's been one of the best receivers in the Big 12 and the country this year. So he's been awesome. And then Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman, those are 2 guys we've talked a lot about in terms of can they get them back next year. They were so good this year. Both guys, it felt like Danny probably should have been a semifinalist for the Butkus Award. Billy Bowman should have been a finalist for the Thorpe Award. If those 2 guys come back, I would be really hard not to see how those guys don't make it this next year as finalists for those 2 awards. They're 2 of the best in the country. Billy Bowman especially. his 6 interceptions were game-changing this year.
Sure.
The 3 pick sixes. Unbelievable school record, like you said. Danny Stutzman, has been the leader of that defense. So all 4 very deserving. Should also mention second team, Andrew Rame makes second team. Ethan Downs also makes second team. So again, very well deserved. I think last year, I want to say OU only had 3 guys make first team. It was Marvin Mims, Michael Turk, and gosh, who am I forgetting on first team? Maybe it was Ethan Downs or Danny Stutzman.
Anton Harrison?
It was Anton Harrison. That's who it was. Were the only 3 to make first team.
Without me?
I know. I don't know what I would do, but
unless I'm wrong.
No, you're right. You're right. Those 3 made it last year. So again, it kind of tells you where OU is this year, having that many guys, especially in key spots. When you have the best quarterback in the conference, that's always a good thing.
And kudos to Ethan Downs, because he was the lone preseason All Big 12 selection at the beginning of the year in August, or even, I guess, all the way back in July at Big 12 Media Day. And I think that there was a lot of people that laughed at the idea of Ethan Downs having that type of year. All he did was go on to lead the team in sacks, 4.5 on the year, 6 quarterback hurries, 28 tackles, had the interception against Kansas. That probably should have won you the game. But a really good year. Had career highs in tackles against Central Florida with 6. Had 2 sacks against Texas that came up at very big times down there at the Cotton Bowl. A game that, kind of wrote Dylan Gabriel's legacy, and something that I think a lot of Oklahoma fans, I don't even think, will always remember walking out of Dallas with that win. And then Andrew Rame, it's going to be interesting that he has that extra year.
Yeah.
He walked on Friday at the OU
Senior
TCU game at Senior Day. I would imagine he ends up testing the NFL waters to try to, progress his playing career. But we'll see. Yeah,
no, I think so too. If you had to guess right now, I think he'd go to the NFL. But you never know. Maybe you can convince him to come back. He strikes me as a guy that will want to play in the bowl game.
Sure.
Same with Dylan Gabriel. I know that we mentioned the rumors. I think he's going to play in the bowl game. Maybe not if he enters the portal. We'll see. But Ethan Downs, another guy that I anticipate he'll be back next year. But he's a big piece of that. If you can get an Ethan Downs back next year and he takes another step, because look how big of a step he took this year versus last year. I think that that's a great sign. And again, you get him back. Maybe you get Danny and Billy back. You're talking about a pretty good defense heading into 2024.
We stopped down with our good friend Andy Staples to talk a little bit about the Jeff Lebby move to Mississippi State, Seth Latrell, Joe John Finley taking over as coordinators at Oklahoma, and then Big 12 championship weekend in general, as well as the transfer portal. Here is our interview with Andy. Andy, welcome back. I think the last time that we talked to you, we were talking about there was a glimmer of hope for Oklahoma to get to the Big 12 championship.
That's right.
That has not happened. Oklahoma State and Texas are playing in Arlington on Saturday. We'll get to that in a second. It has been a busy week here in Norman with the departure of Jeff Lebby down to Starkville. Just from kind of the outside looking in for Oklahoma fans, what kind of job is Mississippi State?
it's a very hard job. It's difficult. I mean, you think about you now. The divisions are gone in the SEC, so I do think the non-Alabama LSU West jobs got easier because it's going to distribute more. But you add Texas and Oklahoma to the mix of teams you have to play, and now you're going to have to play Georgia more often. So I don't know that it's that much easier, but you don't have to necessarily play Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Texas A&M every single year. You're going to get some Kentucky and some Vanderbilt mixed in there. But, Mississippi State already played Kentucky every year. So we will see what happens. It's a tough gig.
Yeah.
They've been through a lot of coaches. Now, obviously, one of them passed away, and that's why they were in the situation they were in this year where Zach Arnett was basically kind of an extended interim. But they axed Joe Moorhead after 2 years, which I thought was a little bit premature, and basically have been trying to recapture what Dan Mullen did there for the last few years. And I don't know. I think they've started to understand that what Dan Mullen did was pretty hard, and it's not going to be easy to do that. So hopefully Jeff Lebby will get some time to put in what he needs to put in, get the players in that he needs to get in there and see how competitive he can be. They don't need to have a quick trigger on this one because you'd be getting into some pretty dangerous territory rolling it over too quickly.
Obviously, with Jeff's departure, that opens up the job here at Oklahoma, the offensive coordinator position. Andy, what were your thoughts maybe of that opening from a national perspective? Because what we heard is, several people would be interested. Externally, obviously, they end up promoting internally with Seth Latrell. I mean, what do you know about Seth Latrell, and just what's your thoughts on the OU offensive coordinator position?
Well, I mean, Seth Latrell obviously knows and loves Oklahoma. He's part of that whole crew, everybody who was there when Mike Leach was there and then, worked with Mike Leach through the years. And so he's that piece of it. And then obviously Joe John Finley is from the other tree, the Jeff Lebby, Art Briles offense tree. And it's interesting because they're not the same offense, but everybody who doesn't play football thinks they're the same thing. They're like, oh, you just send the guys down the field and you throw it to them. It's not necessarily the same thing. The run game in the Briles offense is more veer based, and it's a lot of you have the wider splits, and the air raid is more about finding open space and sitting down in the open spaces. But they are they can be married conceptually, and someone who's trained in one can easily pick up the other one because there are similarities that exist between the two. So I think these guys, especially with their understanding of the players and look, Jackson Arnold's going to be the guy at quarterback, so they know him, he knows them. I think everybody should be pretty comfortable.
It seems like the buzzword around Norman is continuity, and I think that there was a little bit of fear going into the SEC and having to learn new offenses, and then you see Penn State hire Andy Kotelnicki today from Kansas. Mm-hmm. Just from an outside looking in, a national perspective, do you think that this was a good hire just to promote from within? It was something Bob did time and time again with his offensive coordinators.
Yeah, and it worked very well for them. You think about their situation, because remember, everybody forgets that Leach was only with Stoops that first year. Yeah. He got hired at Texas Tech right after that. But then they had Mangino and they had Sumlin and they had all these guys that knew what it was, and they were able to just continue it and into the Heupel Norvell pairing that lasted until the end of the 2013 season. Or 2014 season. So I think about how long that was. Essentially an unbroken string from 1999 through 2014. And there was a lot of success in those years.
Andy, next up for Oklahoma is whatever bowl game they end up in. I know that you've put out your bowl projections, and I've also seen you kind of defend Oklahoma at times, maybe trying to get into a New Year's Six bowl. How do you think that's going to shake out? Because you look at the CFP rankings right now, in 9 through 12, you have Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. And I think there's a lot of people here that think that Oklahoma maybe should be ranked ahead of some of those teams because they do have the best win of those groups. But how do you see maybe the New Year's Six and the bowl projections shaking out, especially for Oklahoma?
I don't think the committee's going to agree with me because I actually think Oklahoma and Ole Miss should be above Missouri and Penn State. But they seem pretty intent on Missouri being the top of that group, then Penn State, and then Ole Miss, then Oklahoma. But I think, and I don't know what order you'd put Oklahoma and Ole Miss in, but if they were the top two, they would both make a New Year's Six bowl. And it doesn't look like the committee feels that way. They've done some things that, like, I wouldn't have Ohio State at 6. I'd have them a little bit lower. I don't understand why they think it's such a no-brainer that Oregon's ahead of Texas. And I keep wondering, are they going to do this major reevaluation of all this stuff? Because, like, if you look at some of the power rankings, the FPI, the SP Plus, like, Oklahoma would be top of that group of 4 10-2 teams. And that doesn't seem to matter to them. And they do have the best win. Now, I believe Missouri has the tougher schedule. I think Penn State actually probably has a tougher schedule too, because the Big Ten, you say, oh, all those games stunk. Not exactly. Like, they had some games in there. And also West Virginia was one of their non-conference opponents. So that game helps their strength of schedule quite a bit. But yeah, it's tough because I think, probably if you say what are the best wins of all those groups, it's definitely Oklahoma's win against Texas. It's Penn State's win against Iowa, and it's Ole Miss's win against LSU. So, but I don't think the committee's going to agree with me. So I think Oklahoma fans better get ready for not a New Year's Six bowl.
Yeah, might be headed back down to San Antonio for the
San Antonio bowl, that's what I was thinking. Now, listen, that's all right. There's a place. What's it called? The original. There's a breakfast taco and donut place. Like, okay. One counter is breakfast tacos and one counter is donuts, and it is spectacular.
We gotta go there.
There's a place called Carnitas Lonja, which it's just carnitas. It's all on these giant spits. They make their own tortillas. You buy it essentially by weight, and then they just hand you a stack of tortillas and some homemade salsa, and you go to town. So 2M Smokehouse, great barbecue. Like, you can go worse place than San Antonio now.
There's no complaint. And I guess in a way, if you're not making the New Year's Six game, a top 15 matchup against an Arizona team that is a little bit of an upstart under Jedd Fisch, I guess wouldn't be a terrible consolation.
Jedd Fisch, who may be at an SEC school.
Sure.
Yeah.
At some point down the road, because I think he's going to make Arizona even better next year. Like, if you look at the trajectory so far, he's had 3 seasons there. They've gotten better every one. Like, if they're as good or better than they were this year, he's going to be very in demand. So he may wind up in Oklahoma's conference for all we know.
Sure. It's going to be really interesting. Going into this weekend, it is championship weekend in college football. I assume you had to do Atlanta this weekend for the SEC championship game, which I feel like is a de facto national championship.
Had to, I get to.
Yes.
I can't wait. This is going to be awesome. Because you've got Georgia's the agent of chalk and Alabama's the agent of chaos.
Sure.
And because think about if Alabama wins, like 12-1 Georgia, I think most people assume they'd be out.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way in hell the committee leaves them out.
No.
Because they still think Georgia's better than everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the part that makes that so interesting. But then what do you do with Texas if they win? Because Texas would be 12-1, Alabama would be 12-1, and they played in Tuscaloosa and Texas won. So I would think you have to put Texas above Alabama in that situation. So would you leave Alabama out? I don't think you would. But you'd have to put Texas in. And then what do you do with Florida State if they're 13-0?
It's incredible. And then obviously you have the Pac-12 game coming up on Friday night with the Washington team that I think myself included in this group has been counted out. I've kind of counted them out. I've just expected Oregon to win. But the way that college football works this year, it almost seems like the expected won't happen and Washington will end up winning. And then they're probably into the playoff as well.
That's the most bizarre thing. Washington was a 3-point favorite going into the first meeting.
Yeah.
And now it's a 9.5-point spread for Oregon. And it's only gotten bigger as it went. Because, when it became clear that they were probably going to be rematching, Vegas was putting out preliminary odds. And so it started at like 6 and then 6.5 and then 7.5 and then settled in this week around 9.5. I think at one point it hit 10. And you're just like, how? And I realize Oregon's been thrashing everybody and Washington's been living dangerously, but they did play. Like, we have seen the matchup pretty recently. It doesn't feel like Oregon's 10 points better, but maybe I'm wrong.
Obviously, Andy, I think there'll be a lot of hateful watching this weekend from Oklahoma fans at 11 a.m. on Saturday for the Big 12 championship game. That line, you mentioned the Washington line. I think that line's gotten up to like 16.5 in favor of Texas. How do you think that one's going to shake out?
No idea, because I don't know what Texas shows up.
Yeah.
Like, the Texas that played Texas Tech is the one everybody's been waiting to see all season. Like, Texas has better players than Oklahoma State. Like, it's not even close. Ollie Gordon obviously accepted. He's as good. You know, he can play anywhere. But Texas has not played like they have the better players in most of their games. They did against Alabama, and they did against Texas Tech. They did it in the first half against TCU, but not the second half. And Kansas State, obviously, now they were playing Malik Murphy at quarterback, and turnovers had a big effect on that, but they almost lost that game. So this is one where I wonder if Texas, which will need some style points possibly if it wants to make the playoff, because at that point, they won't know what's going to happen in the ACC game. Like, if Florida State loses, yeah, they're probably in. But if Florida State doesn't lose, how do you get yourself into the argument? I don't know if there is going to be an argument, but how do you get yourself into the argument? Well, you have to beat Oklahoma State something like 50-7. And can they do that? On the right day, they can. Sure. But on the right day, they can also lose this game 26-24. And that's sort of the conundrum of Texas. Like, they have the capability. I think they actually have the dudes to beat anybody in the country. I think on the right day, they could beat Georgia, they could beat Michigan, but on the wrong day, they can lose to almost anybody.
It's the beauty of college football. Outside of the championship weekend, last one for me, Andy, the transfer portal. It is dominated. I think anybody that is not preparing for a championship weekend is just kind of watching the transfer portal and everything that comes with it. Matt Rule's comments with the $1 to $2 million going rate for a quarterback. My first impression when I saw the quote yesterday was, that seems kind of cheap for some of these guys that are going to be in the transfer portal. Just your thoughts on that. And for somebody like Dylan Gabriel, that the questions are in the air, would it be worth it to maybe exercise another year that he has to not necessarily come back to Oklahoma, but maybe shop himself?
Oh, I think Dylan Gabriel would be very valuable in the portal, because this is what I was on a radio show on Thursday morning, and they were asking me about Matt Rule's comments. And so I had heard that number basically for an established Power 5 successful quarterback, someone who has proven they can be a successful starter in the so like the only person in the portal right now who fits that description is Riley Leonard coming from Duke. Nobody else even fits it. Even DJU doesn't quite fit that description. Dylan Gabriel would fit that description. Like, Dylan Gabriel would be worth a lot of money in the transfer portal. And it's weird because at Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold, like, it actually probably wouldn't be as financially sound for them to pony up to keep Dylan Gabriel. It'd be better for them to pony up to pay for a defensive lineman or another offensive lineman, like, because they have a quarterback they really like that they feel like can get the job done. And then Dylan Gabriel, if he hit the open market, I think would be very much sought after, because, you know, I would put him and Riley Leonard squarely at the top of what's available right now. And because I know that, you know, there's been reports about maybe Cam Ward from Washington State might enter too, but I would put Dylan above him too. It would be him or Riley Leonard as the two biggest prizes right now.
No doubt about it. Andy, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time today. And it's going to be a really interesting week. It's kind of sad to see this thing wrap up, but it is going to be a really fun championship weekend.
Listen, we got free agency coming. It's all good. We will have no shortage of things to talk about. And I want to advertise, by the way, I know you guys will be covering the transfer portal and all that like a blanket, but we're on the national side. We are going to have a wall-to-wall show on Monday.
Awesome.
As the portal opens for most of the players. I know it's open for some already, but me and JD Piquel and Josh Newberg on the On3 Sports YouTube channel all day. We're going to treat it like we would treat signing day. And I'm telling you, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great. We appreciate it, Andy. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andy.
See ya. It's going to be a really interesting weekend in Arlington. I know that, a lot of people, as you said, are probably going to be hate watching that thing. And it's going to be an interesting week because Oklahoma will get its bowl destination coming up on Sunday. What time is that? Do you know?
I believe at 1:30 on ESPN Central Time, they will be releasing the New Year's Six bowl games.
Okay.
I know the college football playoff is before that. Oklahoma's not making the college football playoff, but you might want to tune in that because
you ruled that out?
Yeah, I've ruled it out.
Interesting.
No tiebreaker situations there. But you might want to watch anyways because if OU wants to get into New Year's Six Bowl, maybe their best shot is Texas getting into the playoffs. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I believe OU's bowl game will be announced sometime 1:30 on Sunday if you're into that kind of thing. And also, if you're marking your calendars, go ahead and mark it for December 13th. That's a Wednesday, 6 o'clock on ESPN. The SEC will be releasing the 2024 football schedule.
We were talking about the NCAA transfer portal, and as we are taping, as we are going through this, Oklahoma has added a third player into the NCAA transfer portal. Tawee Walker has announced that he is entering the transfer portal.
That's a big one.
This is literally breaking news to you.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, because we were just talking about Gavonte Barnes. Does that mean that Gavonte Barnes feels safe where he's at? And we talked about this on the Unofficial 40 as well this week. Tawee Walker, we knew that there was something going on, and I don't want to speculate because I don't know exactly. But going back into the suspension that he served, I don't even remember what game that was. UCF. Okay.
Yep. It was the UCF game.
That's right, because it was after Texas, and then you started seeing a little bit more Gavonte Barnes. Not just terribly shocking in terms – I know that you said, wow, and you were surprised. I think it's more so not necessarily surprised that he's entering the portal as much as it is that it just happened, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me completely. Just, again, like you said, the suspension earlier this year. I think it's safe to say, Eddie, him and DeMarco maybe didn't always see eye to eye on everything. And I think he also maybe sees somewhat the writing on the wall. I mean, I think it's Gavin Sawchuk's job moving forward. You also have the rest of that room. They have some young guys they really like in Caleb Hickson, Dalen Smothers. You mentioned Gavonte Barnes. Who knows what his future is? And then you're bringing in Taylor Tatum, the number one running back in the country. Where exactly does Tawee fit in there? And I know Tawee had a really good year, but I do think that there's some other guys that Oklahoma feels good about. And I'm sure Tawee looks at it as, hey, I think he has 1 year left of eligibility. He probably wants to go and be a starter somewhere. He wants to be somebody that can have a year where he can put a lot of film on tape and have NFL scouts look at him. So it's not totally shocking. It's kind of a blow, though, right? Because he did do a lot for Oklahoma this year. He was really good at times, and you'd like to have that experience back. So going to be interesting to see where Tawee ends up.
Sure. And I think that he could probably end up somewhere. I'm not sure about like the NIL game or, scholarship.
I'm sure that played into it too.
That he wasn't going to be put on scholarship.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if he was, I would think he would be staying.
Sure.
Or at least, if he was getting a big NIL deal, which I think he could probably get somewhere else. I mean, I would think that all played into it.
Sure. And as you said, it just seems like after the suspension against Central Florida, I don't know if him and the running backs coach DeMarco Murray ever really saw eye to eye. I think that's probably the best way to say it. So it's going to be really interesting as the transfer portal opens up, as Andy said, on Monday, December 4th. We're going to have a lot of more information about what is going to be happening with Oklahoma and what bowl game they're going to be headed to, as George said. It will also be kind of interesting, too. Once you get into the team has had basically the week off, and they had the team meeting today, I believe, on Thursday, and I think that's kind of maybe where Brent said, all right, you need to let us know if you're going to be in or out for the bowl game as they start preparation come next week, as well as the transfer portal stuff. It'll be interesting to see who the opt-out guys are.
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful that you would look at. Tyler Guyton has been one that's been floated out there. He's headed to the NFL. Does Dylan Gabriel play? I think he will, unless he, again, enters the portal or something like that. But there's several. Woody Washington, what does he do? He strikes me as a guy that would want to play in the bowl game. So we'll see. I think that the overall consensus, though, I think there's going to be quite a few guys that do go through and want to play in their final game.
Yeah, I think so. And, outside of, like you said, Tyler Guyton, I almost would be a little bit surprised if you saw. There's always going to be one or two guys. Like I posted on the Crimson Corner today. There's always one guy, maybe two guys that you go, what the hell is he thinking?
Yeah.
Like, where's he going to go?
Right.
But that happens. That's
college football.
That's the world of college football right now. All right, George, we appreciate it. We will be
Yep.
back here on Monday. One more time before we get out of here today. For YouTube viewers, 2 months, $1, Soonerscoop.com. Promo code OU1. 2 months, $1, promo code OU1. It is going to be, there it is right there for you. It's going to be a very, very busy week, even though Oklahoma won't be playing a game this weekend. It's going to be a busy week around here in the state of Oklahoma. We'll catch up with Josh with the recruiting report coming up on Monday as well, with state championships being played in Edmond. I was going to say Oklahoma City. Same thing, Oklahoma City, Edmond. Yeah. 4 or 5. We're all one. BLC. All right, George Tawee. I'm Eddie Radosevich from the Soonerscoop.com studios. We will talk to you next week.